It started as a $40,000 joke in San Francisco's most expensive restaurant. It ended with a waitress turning the tables on the city's most notorious bachelor, and his own game becoming her perfect revenge. But things are about to get rough. Grayson Cole drummed his fingers against the polished mahogany table at True Billionaire restaurant, watching the ice melt in his fourth glass of scotch. Around him, the city's most expensive restaurant hummed with quiet conversation and the gentle clink of silverware. He stifled another yawn. "God, I'm tired of these boring dinners," Clark Wellington said, tilting back in his chair. His Italian suit wrinkled as he stretched, earning a disapproving glance from an elderly woman at the next table. Same people, same food, same everything. James Chun, their group's resident troublemaker, loosened his tie and signaled for another bottle of wine. At 28, he was the youngest of their circle, but had already made billions in tech startups. "You know what this place needs?" His eyes gleamed with mischief. "Some entertainment." Grayson raised an eyebrow. "Your kind of entertainment usually ends with someone getting arrested." "Or married," David Thompson added from across the table, earning laughs from the group. James sat up straighter, his attention caught by something, or someone behind Grayson. "Speaking of marriage," he pointed with his chin toward their waitress. "Gray, I dare you to propose to her." Grayson turned in his seat, following James's gaze. The waitress, Clara Evans, according to her name tag, moved between tables with efficiency, and it was obvious that she was used to this. Her uniform hung loose on her small frame, and those thick glasses kept slipping down her nose. She tucked a stray curl back into her messy bun as she jotted down orders. "You can't be serious," Grayson said, turning back to his friends. The alcohol had made him warm and reckless, but even he had limits. Clark leaned forward, suddenly interested. "20 grand says you won't do it." 30, David chimed in. "If you make it convincing." 40, James added. "If you get someone to record it." Grayson studied his friends' eager faces. The rational part of his brain, the part his father had spent years grooming to take over coal industries, told him this was stupid. But the part of him that still rebelled against becoming his father's carbon copy whispered that it might be fun. "Fine," he said, reaching into his pocket. Among his keys and wallet, he found one of the rings he kept for his temporary companions, a simple silver band with a modest diamond. "Watch and learn, boys." As Grayson stood, smoothing his tailored suit, he noticed Clara pause by the kitchen entrance. Her hand rested on the door, and for a moment he thought she might have heard them. But that was impossible from this distance. He approached her with his usual charm, the same easy confidence that had earned him his reputation as San Francisco's most notorious bachelor. "Excuse me, Clara?" She turned, and something in her eyes made him hesitate. They were green, a sharp, intelligent green that seemed out of place behind those unfashionable glasses. People around them began to notice. A woman at a nearby table grabbed her phone, already recording. "Perfect." Grayson dropped to one knee, fighting back a smirk as he heard the expected gasps and whispers. Clara stood very still, her order pad clutched tight in one hand. "Clara," he said, loud enough for his audience to hear, "from the moment I saw you, I knew you were special." The rehearsed words felt like sand in his mouth, but he pressed on. "Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" He held up the ring, waiting for the tears, the shocked stammering, maybe even a mortified retreat. It would make a great story at their next dinner. The waitress who thought a billionaire would actually marry her. But Clara didn't cry. She didn't run. Instead, her lips curved into a smile that made his chest feel strangely tight. There was something knowing in that smile, something that made him feel like he'd walked into a trap of his own making. "Yes," she said clearly, holding out her hand. The restaurant erupted in applause and cheers. Phones flashed from every direction. At the corner table, his friends roared with laughter, probably already planning how to spread this video across their social media. Grayson's hands felt numb as he slid the ring onto her finger. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She was supposed to be embarrassed, not whatever this was. Clara leaned down, her breath warm against his ear. Her voice was soft silk wrapped around steel when she whispered, "Let's see who gets the last laugh." She straightened up, still wearing that mysterious smile, and walked away to deliver her orders, as if she hadn't just turned his prank upside down. Grayson returned to his table on unsteady legs. His friends were beside themselves, tears of laughter streaming down their faces. "Oh man," James wheezed. "Did you see how eager she was? Like she won the lottery." "Pay up," Grayson said, but the victory felt hollow. Something about Clara's smile, about the way she'd looked at him. His phone buzzed. A notification showed that James had already posted the video, tagging him with the caption, "Love at first serve. Hashtag Cole wedding, hashtag Cinderella, hashtag Prince Charming." As likes and comments began pouring in, Grayson looked back at Clara. She moved through the restaurant with the same efficiency as before, but now she wore his ring, and that knowing smile that made him wonder if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. Grayson Cole woke up to his phone ringing, a piercing sound that felt like needles in his brain. The sun passed through his penthouse windows, and he squinted at the screen. 37 missed calls, over 200 text messages, and countless social media notifications. His stomach dropped as memories from last night flooded back. No, he muttered, sitting up too quickly. The room spun. He fumbled for the aspirin in his bedside drawer, nearly knocking over a glass of water. His phone rang again. "James." "Turn on your TV," James said before Grayson could speak. "Channel 8. Grayson grabbed his remote, and there it was, his proposal to Clara playing on the morning news. The headline read, "Billionaire's romantic restaurant proposal goes viral." "They're calling you Prince Charming," James said, laughing. "The comments are wild. Everyone loves a good rags to riches story." "This isn't funny anymore," Grayson growled, watching himself get down on one knee. The camera angle caught Clara's smile perfectly, that knowing look that had kept him awake half the night. "We need to fix this." "Fix what?" "This is gold. Your social media following has doubled since last night. Hashtag Cole wedding is trending nationwide." Grayson ended the call and scrolled through his notifications. Celebrity gossip sites had already dug up his past relationships, painting him as the reformed playboy who finally found true love. Fashion magazines praised Clara's authentic charm and refreshing realness. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Clark. "Have you checked your email?" Clark asked, sounding unusually serious. "Your grandmother's assistant sent something to all of us." Grayson's blood ran cold. He opened his email and found it, a formal invitation to Sunday dinner at the Cole estate, specifically requesting the presence of Mr. Grayson Cole and his lovely fiancée. As if summoned by his dread, his phone lit up with his grandmother's call. Patricia Cole, the woman who had shaped the Cole empire for 40 years, who had never approved of any woman he'd dated. Finally, her voice crackled through the speaker, full of rare enthusiasm. "A proper girl, not those empty-headed socialites you waste time with. I've already called Madame Rousseau about altering your mother's wedding dress." "Grandmother, I can explain." "Oh, I've seen the video a dozen times already. Such a humble girl, working as a waitress despite this economy. That's the kind of sensible woman this family needs. I expect to meet her at Sunday dinner." "And Grayson?" Her voice hardened. "Don't you dare mess this up." The line went dead before he could respond. Grayson threw his phone onto the bed and headed for his shower, hoping the hot water would clear his head. It didn't. By the time he dressed for the office, 3 more news outlets had requested interviews. His phone pinged with a message from David. "Tried to find your Cinderella at the restaurant. She quit this morning. No forwarding address." "Perfect." She'd probably run off to sell her story to the highest bidder. He could already see the tell-all book, How I Fooled a Billionaire. He grabbed his keys, determined to handle this mess from his office. But when he opened his front door, he found a small package waiting. Inside was a copy of that morning's newspaper, their proposal splashed across the front page. A note was attached in elegant handwriting. Your grandmother's assistant called the restaurant last night for my contact information. I do hope you don't mind that I gave it to her. She seems lovely. A second message arrived on his phone from an unknown number. See you at dinner, fiancé. Don't worry, I'll dress up for the occasion. Grayson stood in his doorway, the newspaper clutched in his hands as reality sank in. Clara hadn't run away embarrassed. She hadn't sold her story. No, she'd done something far worse. She'd turned his game into her own. At the office, his secretary Jane greeted him with a smile and a stack of congratulatory cards. The board members are thrilled, she said, following him into his office. They think this marriage will improve the company's image. Mr. Thompson already called to discuss moving up your promotion to CEO. Grayson collapsed into his chair, loosening his tie. Get me everything you can find on Clara Evans. Work history, background, anything. Already did, Jane said, sliding a thin folder across his desk. She's worked at True Billionaire Restaurant for 8 months. Before that, nothing. It's like she appeared out of thin air. He opened the folder. 1 page. Just her employee application with basic information and an emergency contact that led to a disconnected number. His computer chimed with another email, a wedding venue offering their most exclusive package. Then another from a luxury car dealer congratulating him with a special offer. Another from a real estate agent with listings for perfect newlywed homes. The world was moving at lightning speed, and for the first time in his life, Grayson Cole had absolutely no control over it. He spent the rest of the day trying to focus on work, but his mind kept returning to Clara's words. Let's see who gets the last laugh. The way she'd said it, so confident, so assured, like she'd been waiting for someone like him to make exactly this mistake. At 6 o'clock, his grandmother's assistant called with detailed instructions for Sunday dinner. Miss Evans has already confirmed her attendance, the assistant said cheerfully. Mrs. Cole is quite excited. Grayson hung up and walked to his office window, watching the city lights come alive below. In less than 24 hours, a silly joke had turned into a media sensation, earned his grandmother's approval, and accelerated his path to CEO. And at the center of it all was Clara Evans, a woman who had transformed from target to mystery. A woman who had taken his cruel joke and turned it into... what exactly? His phone buzzed one last time that day. Another message from Clara. Your grandmother asked about my dress size. I told her not to worry. I have something perfect in mind. Sleep well, my Prince Charming. Grayson looked at the message for a long time, remembering that creepy smile, those intelligent eyes behind thick glasses. He had a feeling he wouldn't be sleeping well at all. Grayson Cole checked his watch for the 20th time in 5 minutes. The massive grandfather clock in the foyer ticked away mercilessly as he paced the floors of his family's mansion. Every step echoed his mounting anxiety. Stop fidgeting, Patricia Cole commanded from her armchair. You're making me nervous. Grandmother, about Clara. I've already heard everything about her from my friends at the country club. Such a refreshing change from your usual choices. Patricia adjusted her pearl necklace. Though I must say, the video hardly did her justice. She seems interesting. Grayson ran his hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up. The word interesting from Patricia Cole usually preceded someone's social execution. The doorbell chimed. I'll get it, he said quickly, almost running to the door. He had a whole speech prepared, threats, bribes, whatever it would take to contain this situation. He swung the door open and forgot every word he'd planned to say. The woman on his doorstep made his mind go blank. Gone was the ill-fitting waitress uniform, replaced by a black dress that followed every curve with deliberate precision. Her hair, no longer frizzy and confined, cascaded over her shoulders in soft waves that caught the evening light. But it was her eyes that stopped his breath, bright green and magnetic, no longer hidden behind those thick glasses. "Hello, darling." Clara's voice carried the same quiet confidence she'd shown at the restaurant, but now it was wrapped in silk and honey. "Did you miss me?" She stepped past him, her heels clicking against the marble, leaving behind a trace of jasmine perfume. Grayson grabbed her elbow. "What are you playing at?" Clara's smile could have cut glass. "I'm meeting my future grandmother-in-law." "Isn't that what good fiancés do?" "Is that my future granddaughter?" Patricia's voice rang through the foyer. Clara's whole demeanor shifted in an instant. Her sharp smile melted into something warm and sweet as she moved toward Patricia. "Mrs. Cole, what an honor to meet you. Your home is absolutely beautiful." Patricia rose to greet her, eyes scanning Clara from head to toe. "Well, well, the ugly duckling cleans up rather nicely, doesn't she, Grayson?" Grayson watched in amazement as Clara blushed perfectly on cue. "Oh, Mrs. Cole, you're too kind. I'm just a simple girl who got lucky enough to catch your grandson's eye." "Simple?" Patricia raised an eyebrow. "That dress is from Laurent's latest collection. I tried to get one myself, but they were sold out worldwide." Clara smoothed the fabric with practiced ease. "I have a friend who works in fashion. She helped me find something appropriate for tonight. I wanted to make a good impression. Consider me impressed." Patricia linked her arm through Clara's. "Come, dear. Tell me everything about yourself over dinner." Grayson followed them into the dining room, watching Clara transform yet again. She held herself with the perfect blend of humility and grace as she sat down, placing her napkin in her lap with the perfect movements of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. Throughout dinner, Clara wove a masterful story. She spoke of her hard-working parents, both teachers, her volunteer work at animal shelters, her dreams of opening a small boutique someday. Each answer seemed carefully crafted to appeal to Patricia's old money values, while maintaining an air of authenticity. "And how exactly did my grandson catch your eye?" Patricia asked over dessert. "The video was charming, but I'd love to hear your side." Clara's eyes met Grayson's across the table. "Actually, I noticed him long before he noticed me. He came to the restaurant often with his friends, always so focused on their business discussions. I admired his dedication." Grayson nearly choked on his wine. This woman was either a brilliant actress or a professional con artist. Possibly both. "But I never expected him to propose," Clara continued, touching the ring on her finger. "It was like a dream come true." Patricia beamed. "Well, I always said Grayson needed someone sensible to settle down with. These society girls just wouldn't do." After dinner, Clara charmed Patricia further by asking about old family photos, listening intently to stories about the Cole family history. By the time Patricia retired for the evening, she had extracted promises from Clara about wedding dress shopping and future Sunday dinners. "What a delightful girl," Patricia said to Grayson. "Don't mess this up." Grayson walked Clara to her car, a modest but well-maintained sedan that fit her carefully constructed image perfectly. The night air felt electric between them. "Who are you really?" He grabbed her arm, harder than he meant to. Clara turned to face him, and for a moment her mask slipped. The sweet, humble girl from dinner vanished, replaced by something far more dangerous. Her smile turned sharp as a blade. "Wouldn't you like to know?" She pulled her arm free with surprising strength. "Your grandmother wants to take me shopping next weekend. I'm thinking Vera Wong for the wedding dress. After all," she slid into her car with fluid grace, "only the best for a Cole bride." As she drove away, Grayson stood in the driveway, his world tilting on its axis. The waitress he'd tried to humiliate had just spent the evening running circles around him, and worse, his grandmother was already planning their wedding. Inside, his phone lit up with a message. Thanks for a lovely evening, darling. Your grandmother is an absolute dear. Sleep well. Grayson stared at the message, remembering the way Clara had moved through his family home like she belonged there, the way she'd matched Patricia Cole power play for power play. He had a feeling he'd just lost another round in whatever game they were playing. And somehow, he couldn't wait for the next one. Grayson stared at the file on his desk, his coffee growing cold beside him. Clara Evans wasn't Clara Evans at all. Are you sure about this? He asked his head of security, Michael, who stood by the window. Completely. Clara Everton, rising star in fashion design, graduated top of her class from Parsons. She was about to launch her own label 5 years ago. Michael tapped the folder. Then she vanished. Grayson opened the magazine clippings Michael had collected. There she was, Clara with straight black hair and bold red lipstick, standing beside her designs at Fashion Week. Her smile was different then, proud, open, unguarded. What happened? Nathan Pierce happened. Michael pulled up an article on his tablet. Her fiancé and business partner. He sold her designs to a competitor, claimed she'd stolen them, and took all their investors with him. The scandal destroyed her reputation overnight. Grayson's fingers curled into fists. And now she's back, playing waitress and accepting fake proposals. Maybe not so fake anymore. The Coal Industries Board loves her. Your approval ratings have never been higher. A knock interrupted them. Clara stood in the doorway of his office, wearing a sky blue dress that made her look like she'd stepped out of a vintage fashion plate. Am I interrupting? Michael slipped out as Clara walked in, her heels clicking against the hardwood. She spotted the magazine clippings on his desk and smiled, that weird smile that had been haunting his dreams. Ah, she said, perching on the edge of his desk. You've been doing your homework. Why didn't you tell me? And miss watching you piece it together? She picked up one of the photos. Besides, you didn't ask. You were too busy trying to figure out how to get rid of me. She wasn't wrong. He'd spent weeks trying to find a way out of this engagement, but Clara had outmaneuvered him at every turn. The board viewed their marriage as the perfect PR move. His grandmother had already booked the cathedral. What do you want, Clara? He stood up, moving closer to her. Revenge? Money? What makes you think I want anything? She tilted her head, studying him. Maybe I just enjoy watching you squirm. No one's that simple, says the man who proposed to a waitress on a dare. Her green eyes sparked with amusement. How's that working out for you? Before he could answer, his assistant Jane buzzed through. Mr. Cole, the board meeting starts in 5 minutes. Clara hopped off his desk. That's my cue. We have that dinner with the mayor tonight. I'll wear something appropriate for your future CEO image. She headed for the door, but Grayson caught her wrist. This game you're playing. Who says I'm playing? She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her jasmine perfume. Maybe I just want what you promised when you got down on one knee. I didn't promise you anything. No. Her free hand straightened his tie with practiced ease. Then why is your heart racing? She was right. His pulse had quickened the moment she'd touched him. This close, he could see the flecks of gold in her eyes, the slight curve of her lips that always seemed to hide a secret. You drive me crazy, he admitted. Good. She pulled away, leaving him off balance. See you tonight, darling. That evening, true to her word, Clara showed up to the mayor's dinner looking every inch the future Mrs. Cole. She charmed the other guests with her wit, laughed at the right moments, and kept her hand on Grayson's arm like they were madly in love. But in quiet moments, when no one was watching, she'd whisper comments that made him laugh despite himself. She noticed things others missed, the mayor's wife's hidden disappointment, the subtle power plays between council members. Dance with me, he said suddenly, pulling her onto the floor as the band played. Clara moved with natural grace, following his lead perfectly. Trying to show off for the cameras? Trying to figure you out? He spun her, brought her back closer than necessary. You could have exposed me, ruined my reputation. Instead, You're playing the perfect fiancé. Why? Maybe I like playing pretend. Her fingers traced patterns on his shoulder. Or maybe I'm waiting for you to realize this isn't pretend at all. The music ended, but they stayed close, swaying slightly. Clara's eyes held his, challenging and mysterious all at once. You're extraordinary, he said softly. I know. She stepped back, breaking the spell. But don't fall in love with me, Grayson. You might not like what happens next. Later that night, alone in his penthouse, Grayson watched old interviews of Clara Everton online. She spoke passionately about her designs, about making women feel powerful and beautiful. The interviewer asked about her upcoming wedding to Nathan Pierce. Nathan believes in me completely, past Clara said, beaming. We're going to build something amazing together. Grayson closed his laptop, remembering the way Clara had felt in his arms tonight, the way she made him laugh, made him think, made him want to be better than the man who'd proposed to her as a joke. His phone buzzed with a message from her. Thanks for the dance. Sweet dreams, future husband. He stared at the message for a long time, wondering when exactly he'd stop trying to end this engagement and started hoping it might be real. Clara's fingers tightened around Grayson's arm as they walked into the Manhattan ballroom. She wore silver tonight, a dress that caught light with every movement, making her sparkle like freshly fallen snow. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. You okay? Grayson asked, noting how her steps had slowed. I'm fine. Her voice carried none of its usual playfulness. Just tired. Then she saw the magazine spread on a table near the entrance. Nathan Pierce's face splashed across the cover of Fashion Weekly. The headline read, Fashion's Golden Boy Returns. Nathan Pierce seeks fresh talent. Clara's perfectly manicured nails dug into Grayson's sleeve. We can leave, he offered, surprised by his own protectiveness. She straightened her shoulders. No, I won't run. But as they entered the main hall, Clara stopped mid-step. There he was, Nathan Pierce, surrounded by admirers, looking exactly like his magazine cover. His perfectly styled dark hair and expensive suit screamed success, but something in his smile reminded Grayson of a wolf. Clara? Nathan's voice cut through the crowd. His eyes lit up with recognition, and he started moving toward them. All the color drained from Clara's face. Her hand trembled against Grayson's arm, the first real crack he'd seen in her armor since that night at the restaurant. Dance with me, Grayson said quickly, pulling her onto the dance floor. He felt her trembling as he drew her close, one hand on her waist, the other holding hers. I've got you, he whispered, surprising himself with how much he meant it. Clara's eyes met his, vulnerability replacing her usual confidence. He'll wait, she murmured. Nathan always waits. Then we'll keep dancing. Grayson turned them smoothly, keeping his body between Clara and Nathan's approaching figure. Tell me about him. Clara's laugh held no humor. What's to tell? I loved him. He betrayed me. Tale as old as time. There's more to it than that. She rested her head against his shoulder, perhaps hiding from watchful eyes, perhaps seeking comfort. We met at Parsons. He was brilliant at business, I was good at design. Perfect match, right? He proposed the day we signed the papers for our company. Grayson's jaw clenched. And then he stole your designs. He did worse. Her voice dropped lower. He made me doubt myself. Every idea, every sketch, he'd praise them to my face, then whisper to our investors that they weren't original enough, weren't marketable enough. By the end, I could barely draw a straight line without second-guessing every stroke. The music changed to something slower. Around them, other couples swayed and smiled, oblivious to the drama unfolding in their midst. Miss Everton. Nathan's voice came from behind them. Or is it Evans now? Clara lifted her head from Grayson's shoulder, her mask sliding back into place. But Grayson felt her fingers grip his harder. Nathan. Her voice was cool, controlled. Still wearing that fake Rolex, I see. Nathan's practiced smile flickered. You look wonderful, Clara. Success agrees with you. His eyes flicked to Grayson. Though I heard this success came from a rather unusual proposal. Careful, Grayson warned quietly. Oh, I mean no offense. Nathan held up his hands. I'm genuinely happy for Clara. Though I must say, he leaned closer, green always was your color, darling. Remember that dress you designed for our engagement party? The one that never made it to production. Clara flinched as if he'd struck her. Grayson pulled her closer. The party's boring, he announced loudly. Let's get out of here. Running away again, Clara? Nathan's voice followed them. Some things never change. Grayson felt Clara's steps falter, but she kept moving. They made it to the terrace where the cool night air helped wash away the tension. I hate him, Clara whispered, her hands gripping the stone balustrade. I hate that he can still affect me like this. Grayson stood beside her, close enough to offer support, but not touching. He's trying to get under your skin. He's succeeding. She turned to face him, moonlight silvering her tears. Do you know what the worst part is? For years, I've imagined what I'd say to him if I ever saw him again. All the clever comebacks, all the ways I'd show him he hadn't broken me. She laughed bitterly. And then I see him, and I'm right back there, watching everything I built turn to ash. Without thinking, Grayson reached out and brushed away a tear from her cheek. You're not that person anymore. No. She leaned into his touch. Then who am I, Grayson? The waitress? The fashion designer? The fake fiancée? You're Clara, he said simply. The woman who turned my stupid prank into her own victory. The woman who terrifies my grandmother's society friends because they can't figure out where you came from or how you learned to play their games so well. A real smile tugged at her lips. I do enjoy confusing them. I've noticed. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. For what it's worth, I think Nathan Pierce is an idiot who didn't deserve your talent. And one day, you're going to design something so spectacular it'll make him choke on that fake Rolex. Clara laughed, a genuine laugh this time. That's surprisingly sweet of you. Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to maintain. She studied him for a moment, then stood on her tiptoes and kissed his cheek. Thank you for the dance, Grayson Cole. As they left the ballroom, Grayson caught Nathan watching them with hawk eyes. Let him watch, Grayson thought. Let him see exactly what he'd lost. In the car, Clara's phone lit up with a message. Her smile vanished as she read it. Nathan? Grayson asked. She nodded. He wants to meet. To clear the air before his company's big investment announcement next week. And what do you want? Clara stared out the window at the passing city lights. I want to stop being afraid, she whispered. I want to be strong enough to face him. You are strong enough, Grayson said firmly. And you're not facing him alone. She turned to look at him, surprise and something softer in her eyes. Careful, darling. Keep talking like that, and I might start thinking this engagement isn't so fake after all. Grayson smiled, but his heart beat faster at her words. Because lately, he'd been thinking the exact same thing. The white roses arrived on Monday, 24 pristine blooms with a card that made Clara's hands shake. By Wednesday it was orchids. Friday brought lilies. Each delivery came with notes that grew increasingly insistent. We need to talk. Remember Venice? I miss us. Grayson watched Clara's reaction to each delivery, noting how she'd pause, steel herself, then continue whatever she was doing as if nothing had happened. But he saw the way her shoulders tensed, how her smile dimmed around the edges. I can make him stop, Grayson offered one evening as Clara stared at the latest bouquet. She shook her head. Nathan doesn't stop. He persists until he gets what he wants. Her fingers traced the edge of his note. He's everywhere lately, fashion shows, designer launches, even that breakfast place I like. He's stalking you. He calls it rekindling. Clara's laugh held no warmth. Last week, he cornered me at the Met steps. Told me he's changed, that he realizes what he lost. She turned to Grayson, her green eyes bright with unshed tears. Why now? Why, after 5 years, does he want to fix things? Grayson stepped closer, fighting the urge to pull her into his arms. Because you're successful again. Because this time, you did it without him. The Fashion Week launch party filled the top floor of a sleek downtown hotel. Clara wore red, a dress she'd designed herself, with clever seams that made fabric appear to flow like water. She'd been quiet all evening, her eyes scanning the crowd as if expecting an ambush. "Relax," Grayson murmured, his hand warm against her lower back. "He's not here yet. He'll come." Clara sipped her champagne. This is too perfect an opportunity for his grand gesture. She was right. Nathan arrived an hour later, commanding attention in a midnight blue suit. He worked the room like a politician, but his eyes kept finding Clara. "I need air," Clara said suddenly, heading for the balcony. Grayson moved to follow, but Patricia Cole appeared, pulling him into a conversation about wedding venues. By the time he extracted himself, Clara was gone. He found her on the balcony, her knuckles white against the railing as Nathan stood too close, speaking in low, urgent tones. "I made a mistake," Nathan was saying. "I never should have betrayed you. Come back to me, Clara. We can rebuild everything we lost." Clara's voice carried none of its usual fire. "You destroyed me because you were jealous of my success." "I've changed," Nathan insisted, reaching for her hand. "I was young, stupid, threatened by your talent. But now I can appreciate it. My company's looking for a head designer." His fingers brushed her wrist. Something hot and primitive roared through Grayson's blood. Before he could think, his fist connected with Nathan's jaw, sending the other man staggering backward. "Keep your hands off her," Grayson growled. Nathan touched his split lip, eyes narrowing. "Ah, the fake fiancé comes to the rescue. Tell me, Clara, does he know you're just using him like you used me?" Clara flinched. "That's not, isn't it?" Nathan's smile turned cruel. "I saw the video of his proposal. Quite the performance. You always were good at making men believe what you wanted them to believe." "Shut up," Grayson stepped forward, but Clara caught his arm. "No, let him talk," she said quietly. "He's good at that, twisting things until you doubt yourself. Until you can't tell what's real anymore." "Clara," Nathan's voice softened to the manipulative purr Grayson was beginning to recognize. "Everything I did for us. You weren't ready for success. You needed guidance, structure. I needed support." Clara's voice cracked. "I needed the man who claimed to love me to believe in me. Instead, you sold my designs, told everyone I was unstable, ruined my reputation because you couldn't stand that I might outshine you. And now," Nathan gestured between her and Grayson, "you're playing house with a billionaire who proposed to you as a joke? That's your revenge." Grayson pulled Clara into his arms, surprising them both. The words that came next were completely honest. "You were never a joke to me. You're the only real thing I've ever had." Clara stared up at him, tears in her eyes. "Prove it," she whispered. Nathan's laugh interrupted the moment. "How sweet. The playboy and the waitress. Tell me, Clara, does his grandmother know who you really are? Does the board know their future CEO is marrying damaged goods?" Grayson's next punch sent Nathan sprawling. "Say another word about her, and I'll throw you off this balcony." Security arrived, summoned by the commotion. As they escorted Nathan out, he called over his shoulder, "This isn't over, Clara." But Clara wasn't listening. She stared at Grayson, really looked at him, like she was seeing him for the first time. "Did you mean it?" "Mean what?" "That I'm real to you." Grayson touched her cheek, wiping away a tear with his thumb. "Everything about us started fake, the proposal, the engagement, even our first dance. But somewhere along the way, you became the realest thing in my life. And I'm tired of pretending I'm not falling in love with you." Clara's breath caught. For a moment, she looked as vulnerable as she had that first night in the restaurant. Then she gripped his lapels and pulled him down into a kiss that tasted of champagne and truth and a million possibilities. When they broke apart, she whispered against his lips. I'm tired of pretending too. It's true. All I wanted was to get my big revenge against Nathan. All I wanted was. He placed a finger over her lips before kissing her. I don't care. I want this. Inside, the party continued. But on the balcony, Grayson held Clara close, feeling her heartbeat steady against his chest, knowing that whatever game they'd been playing had just become wonderfully, terrifyingly real. Are you ready? Patricia Cole asked, adjusting Clara's veil with gentle hands. They stood in the bridal suite, surrounded by the soft rustle of silk and the murmur of excitement from the gathering crowd outside. Clara smiled at her reflection. Her wedding dress was her own creation, a masterpiece of delicate lace and flowing silk that transformed with every movement, just like she had transformed herself over the past year. I've been ready for this moment my whole life. Patricia squeezed her shoulders. You know, when I first saw that proposal video, I thought you were exactly what this family needed. I was right, just not in the way I expected. Through the window, they could see the fashion world's elite filling the garden venue. Critics, designers, and editors mingled with the Cole's society friends, all eager to witness both a wedding and the launch of Clara's new design house. Nathan sent his regrets, Patricia mentioned carefully, along with a rather expensive gift. Send it back, Clara said firmly. I have everything I need. A knock at the door announced James, Grayson's friend from that fateful night at the restaurant. Mrs. Cole, they need you for the photos. As Patricia left, James lingered. I owe you an apology, Clara. That dare. I never thought. You never thought I'd say yes? Clara's laugh held no bitterness. Or you never thought I'd end up being perfect for him? James grinned. Both. Though I should have known better when you whispered something in his ear that made him lose his cool for the first time in his life. Speaking of my fiancé, how is he? Nervous. Excited. He's already asked Clark 6 times if he has the rings. James paused. He loves you, you know. Really loves you. Not because you're beautiful or clever, though you are both, but because you made him want to be better. Clara touched her engagement ring. Not the original one from the proposal, but one Grayson had chosen himself months later, when their fake engagement had become wonderfully real. He made me better too. The wedding march began, and Clara took her position. As the doors opened, she saw Grayson waiting at the altar. His eyes found hers immediately, and the love in them made her heart soar. Each step down the aisle felt like coming home. When she reached him, Grayson took her hand, and she felt him trembling slightly. You're stunning, he whispered. So are you, she whispered back, noting how handsome he looked in his tuxedo. The minister began the ceremony, but Clara barely heard the words. She was lost in memories. That first night at the restaurant, the Sunday dinner that changed everything, dancing in Grayson's arms while Nathan watched, the moment on the balcony when pretense fell away. Then came the vows, not the traditional ones, but words they'd written themselves. Clara, Grayson began, his voice strong and sure. I met you because of a stupid dare, proposed as a joke, and fell in love with you somewhere between your first smile and your last challenge. You turned my prank into a blessing, my arrogance into humility, and my life into something meaningful. I promise to spend every day making sure you never regret saying yes. Clara blinked back happy tears. Grayson, you thought you were playing a game that night, but so was I. What neither of us expected was to win something real. You saw me when I was invisible, defended me when I was vulnerable, and loved me when I was afraid to love myself. I promise to keep surprising you, challenging you, and loving you, just as I have since the moment I whispered in your ear. After the rings and the pronouncement, their kiss felt like a beginning rather than an end. The reception doubled as the launch party for Clara's design house. Her collection, displayed on models throughout the venue, told the story of her journey. Each piece could transform, revealing hidden beauty in unexpected ways. It's magnificent, Patricia said, examining a gown that changed from simple to spectacular with a single twist. "You've outdone yourself." The fashion critics agreed. Reviews were already pouring in, praising Clara's innovative designs and celebrating her triumphant return to the industry. During their first dance, Clara leaned close to her new husband's ear and whispered, "Let's see who gets the last laugh." Grayson pulled back to look at her, smiling. "We both won," he said, and kissed her as cameras flashed around them. Later, as they swayed together under the stars, Grayson asked, "Do you ever regret it? Saying yes that night?" Clara considered the question. "I came to that restaurant looking for a fresh start. Instead, I found you, arrogant, privileged, and completely unprepared for someone like me." "I'm still not prepared for you," he admitted. "Good." She straightened his bow tie. "Because I'm just getting started." "Is that a threat, Mrs. Cole?" "It's a promise." She pulled him down for another kiss. The best kind. As the evening wound down, Clara caught sight of their reflection in a window, her in her transforming dress, him looking at her like she was magic. They'd both changed so much since that first night, grown into better versions of themselves together. Patricia found them as they prepared to leave. "I saved that first proposal video," she said with a mischievous smile. "For the grandchildren." "Grandmother," Grayson protested. "What?" "It's a wonderful story. The arrogant billionaire, the mysterious waitress, the dare that changed everything." Clara laughed. "Don't forget the best part." "Which is?" Clara looked at her husband, remembering every moment that had led them here. "That what started as a cruel joke became the greatest love story either of us could have imagined. And we're both laughing," Grayson added, pulling her close. "Together," Clara finished, knowing this was just the beginning of their story.